Good evening, everyone. This is Greg Solzik, and I'm doing Module 4 for EDL 856, Understanding My Community. So my current place of employment is Chadwick International. It's located in Songdo in the Republic of South Korea. As you can see on the map over here, it's right at the northeastern, or excuse me, the northwestern corner of the country. It's in an economic free zone, and so it was established in the school itself was established in 2010 with a grant from the Incheon Free Economic Zone. So the customs and traditions in Songdo are primarily this. Although this is meant to be an international economic free zone, the dominant culture and language is still Korean. As when you walk around the community itself, you will see foreigners, and it's fairly easy to get by just on speaking English. But it's pretty. You will limit yourself if you don't learn some Korean. So at Chadwick International, because of the fact that the vast majority, as I'll get into, the demographics later on, but the customs and traditions of the school are really a mixture. We are an international school, but really our dominant culture is Korean. It's our host culture, and the other strong culture that's there is North American. And so you get a mixture at festivals and school activities that would range from the things that you'd see in the United States for homecoming. Thanksgiving for Koreans is called Chuseok. It's a fall harvest festival. We get a week off during that time. It generally falls in between the middle and the end of September, possibly the beginning of October. It changes year to year, but that's a great time for our Korean students to, acclimate our new teaching staff into what Korean Thanksgiving Chuseok is. We celebrate Halloween. For the vast majority of teaching staff comes from North America, so we do celebrate U.S. and Canadian Thanksgiving. We have a 3-week break at Christmas, which is always nice. And so when in non-COVID times, a lot of the teaching staff go to popular destinations like Thailand or back to the United States during the 3-week break. And we do have some traditions that we do during assemblies during the Christmas time. And then we have a Lunar New Year, which is in February. We have Korean Independence Day, and then we celebrate an International Day where we have approximately 70 different booths from the different nationalities that are represented, and have kind of like an on-campus festival. Population characteristics. So we are a K through 12 international school housed on one facility, which is 1.7 acres. That might not seem like very much, but by Korean standards, it's fairly huge. Buildings tend to build upward in East Asia, and so our school is actually quite spacious, comparatively speaking, to local schools. Approximately 60% of our students commute daily from Seoul, which is about an hour and a half, which plays a big role in the makeup of school culture. We have approximately 1,200 students, 250 teaching staff. The student body is mostly Korean. Chadwick International, because of our status being in an economic free economic zone, it's the only IB World school in Korea that doesn't require a foreign passport, and so that makes it kind of difficult to know the true percentage of Korean students. We cap off, I think, at 50 or 60%, and then the other remaining half is meant to be of foreign nationality as far as the number of students percentage wise on campus by the charter that we have. But many of our students who speak Korean and who at home and at school may hold a Canadian or an American passport. So that, again, when you talk about what the demographics of the school are, it's strongly Korean. So we have approximately 70 nationalities on campus, but again, that doesn't take into account like the fact that some people hold dual passports and things of that nature. For example, my son holds an American passport and Thai nationality, and so he counts as both. And so that's where you could get some skewing of the data with regard to demographics. We have a strong LGBT culture. We're a very open and supportive community. Our largest employers locally are major multinationals like LG, Samsung. We have students and people who are part of the board from World Bank and the Green Climate Fund. And most of our students are, I put this in uppercase, upper or upper middle class. And we'll talk a little bit about how that affects things later on in the presentation. Communication channels. So Korea is very tech savvy. Everywhere that you go, you almost don't even have to have a phone plan. If you have a smartphone, you can be connected to the internet. Our school follows suit. Our school website is very dynamic. We have a presence on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I put over here in the corner, that's our head of school and the head of our foundation, Ted Hill. He was actually in Forbes a few months ago in November. So we have a strong communications department, and we've had on campus. I've been in the middle of basketball practice and have seen Korean TV coming in. They've during breaks they've come in and done K-dramas I've watched on television. All of a sudden saw the school on a local drama, and so we've got videos on Vimeo, and so communication, I would say almost to the point, our school is almost oversaturated in communication to some degree, but very tech savvy and very much the branding is out there. All right, community groups. Again, we've got a strong communications department, and as such, there's quite a bit that goes into branding, and so we certainly have quite a presence in the local community. Songdo here, everyone pretty much, if you go anywhere, you'll usually get a discount at a restaurant or something like that, just because of the fact that you're wearing Chadwick gear or something like that. We have a parent association, the SEPA. We have Brown and Black Student Union, LGBT Alliance, and the school does quite a bit of philanthropic things through various groups. Leadership and power structure. So this is kind of a little bit blurry, and again, part of that comes from the fact that we're in a very unique place in the world and a unique place within Korea itself. But Chadwick School first started in Palos Verdes, so we have a sister school in Palos Verdes, California, and next year we're going to have a third campus in Hanoi, and that is all governed through the Rossler Chadwick Foundation, of which our head of school, Ted Hill, is he's the head of. We also are beholden to the Incheon Free Economic Zone. That's where our charter comes from. We have a large grant from them to operate, and so we have to follow some of the guidance from IFES. Locally, we are overseen by the Incheon Ministry of Education. Although sometimes when, especially COVID, we've actually been under the umbrella of Seoul, primarily because we have over 60% of our students who are coming from Seoul, and so therefore the government local structure here is kind of deferred to Seoul. So again, this is where it can get a little bit murky because of the fact that we are a school that is not connected directly to the public school system. And that we have a transient population that commutes every day, and so we kind of have to listen to both Incheon and Seoul. We are accredited to the International Baccalaureate. So we run all four programs. We're one of very few schools in the world that run all four parts of the IBO. We are also accredited through the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, and of course through the College Board, because we are a test center for the PSAT and the SAT. Economic conditions. So this is a picture of what Songdo looks like. It is, again, in a free economic zone. Really, to be quite honest with you, we have seen limited effects from COVID-19. As a matter of fact, I can't even can't lie. Like I've actually done better because of the fact that I've had more freelance remote work to do through the IB. And I haven't been able to travel, so I've been able to save a lot of money. But the economic conditions actually here for the community at large, I don't think that we have been really greatly affected, primarily because of the fact that we're pretty quick to react well to COVID-19. And so it's kind of normal day life here. It's not super exciting. There's not a lot of travel happening, but you can still go to restaurants. Things are pretty much open. People are following the protocols put out by the government. The government's done very good contact tracing, and so as a result of like the pandemic, we've actually done pretty well. We have huge biotech here. So again, because of the fact that a lot of probably what has been happening with regard to looking for treatments and for vaccines, I'm sure that a lot of that has been happening in Songdo for Korea itself. We are a smart city, and so if you go through Songdo, you almost get future shock. You see things that you would probably see, certainly not in small town America. We've had a lot of internal in tourism as a result of that, because a lot of Koreans do see Songdo as kind of like this new and kind of futuristic city. And so with people not being able to travel abroad, actually on the weekends, we have in the middle of this picture, if you see here, that's a replica of Central Park. And so on any given Saturday and Sunday, Central Park is usually pretty packed. And so again, the economic conditions here have been not adversely affected really as a result of COVID. We are right next to the major international airport for Korea, about 20-minute drive. And so again, we have quick access to infrastructure, and major corporations such as LG, Samsung, and POSCO have their home bases here in Songdo. Political structure, again, as I kind of alluded to, it's pretty confusing as a result of the free economic zone status. Technically, we're under Incheon municipal government, but again, most of our students come from Seoul, and so we have like a snow day or a delay or something like that, or again, if they change conditions in Seoul with regard to like threat levels with regard to COVID, we generally tend to defer to Seoul. And so a lot of times we have to wait a few days to really kind of understand what's happening, because Incheon will put something out and then Seoul will put something different out, and we have to call in directly and see which one we're supposed to follow. So sometimes that can make the dissemination of information a little bit slow and can be a little bit confusing, but it's again a price you pay for being in a free economic zone. Again, we generally follow Incheon city government, but we are influenced by Seoul. Overall, though, that we are overseen by the umbrella of the Korean Ministry of Education. Social tensions and multiculturalism, I kind of added these two things together because I think that there's not really a ton here to talk about, but I will go through and just say it's very limited. The social tensions, I think that we do see and have to deal with as a teaching faculty, really deals quite a bit with approaches to learning, pressure to perform from Korean parents on their kids, like and some competition between students themselves. Korean students are pretty competitive. Like they really want to get into a top 20 university, at least our kids, because they are incredibly affluent. I've had students whose parents have sat on boards of major corporations who come to school, in um, BMWs and $100,000 sports cars and stuff like that. And so there's quite a bit of pressure for students to really perform, and as a result of that, um, there can be some social tensions internally with regard to competition between students. Multiculturalism, there is difficulty with inclusion of foreign students, because a lot of kids um, who who are here don't really have that kind of pressure put on them, and so you'll see different approach and learning styles. Some of our foreign students will be a little bit more laid back and will want to do much more more holistic learning, and we'll get the IB a little bit better. Whereas some of our Korean kids who are really focused on getting a very good SAT score will get a little bit frustrated sometimes when the pace of the class is not at their liking. There can be some limited social activities for students in the high school when it comes to like outside of school activities, because of the fact that there's so many kids who are commuting into Seoul. Because most of our students who are not Korean, they generally tend to live in the greater Songdo area, and Songdo itself is it's good for families, but it can be, if you were a 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old kid, it could be a little bit boring. Um, there can be some issues with language of inclusion. A lot of times we wind up having to talk to kids about the fact that when they're in a group of Korean kids, it's perfectly fine to carry on a conversation if it's all Korean. But once someone who doesn't speak Korean comes in, the language needs to go to the language of inclusion, which is English. So you can see from time to time that there can be some exclusion, but by and large, most of our kids are pretty good. They're usually completely bilingual. Some kids are trilingual, and so it is pretty easy for kids to switch over quite quickly to English. There is an element of classism. I think it's very sublime. It's not completely overt, but there are some students who are incredibly affluent, um, and I think that you don't necessarily see it directly when you first get here as a teacher, but it does manifest itself in sublime ways. Community efforts. So I put a question mark here because actually some of the things that I saw on the slides that were provided, like we don't really have to worry about those. As far as like money and infrastructure, I know some people are probably going to listen to this and hate me for saying that, but it really is true. Um, we kind of have, I don't want to say an unlimited budget, but it's a fairly affluent school with a very large endowment and grant from IFES. So you don't see a lot of big community efforts. I will say that we are building a new campus in Hanoi next year, which has created quite a buzz, and there are people who are going to be going there next year, and so we do know that there's going to be a lot of change at the school. We also have been tasked to put forth a lot more collaborative activities between our our Los Angeles Palos Verdes campus and here. Last year, before COVID, I was actually going to be doing a basketball trip to Thailand, in conjunction with Michael Cooper, the former Laker, who's the head coach at the Chadwick School. Unfortunately, that got canceled, and so we'll have to wait until COVID's done to see if we will be able to do that. But that's one of the things that we have been doing, is trying to live up to the ethos of two campuses, one school. It will now be obviously three campuses, one school when the Hanoi branch opens. Public opinion about Chadwick. I'll give you an anecdote from when I was at my last school in Taiwan. I was out shopping, and one of my students was Korean, and I saw her and her family, and I told her where I was going, and they're like in complete shock. They're like, "Oh my God, you're going to Chadwick!" And so that's from expat Korean people in a different country. Generally speaking, you see the school on television. You see it in K-pop and things like that, or in dramas, K-dramas, excuse me. Um, Generally speaking, people know that Chadwick is like an American school, American international school, with the IB, and that the students who go here go to schools like Cornell and to Ivy League schools and things like that. And so the branding for the school and the communication and the message of what type of school we are generally gives the school a very good public image. And so those are my references, and thank you for watching.